everybody. I just had my interview for naturalization, and I passed. And I would like to talk to you about the important things that you need to have in mind before you go to the naturalization interview. The questions were very straightforward, and there were not any like tricky questions or any questions that would lead to you failing the exam. They were pretty straightforward. When I got there, it's like when you go through TSA in the airport, you take everything out of your pockets, and then you walk through a metal detector, and then you go to a window to see somebody in a window. They take your green card, they take your passport, they take your letter that you received in the mail for the appointment, and then they send and you wait in a waiting room, and then the officer who is going to conduct the interview comes out, and they call you by your name and say, hey, how are you? How was your trip coming here? These are key things that you have to keep in mind. You have to show your English skills, because if you communicate well, even saying hello, my trip was good, even saying that will let the officer know that you have good domination of the English language. And they will ask you like, okay, do you swear that you're gonna say the truth and nothing but the truth? You say, yes, I do. They ask you things like that. And then they will get like into more detail, like what can you say your name? Like you have to understand everything they say and answer right away, so you don't give them any index that you have any like poor English skills or something, because you have to show like an average intermediate English language speech. You have to be able to communicate in English and be able to write in English. They will ask you what's your date of birth, what's your address, what's your phone number, things like that. And that is actually part of the English test. Everything they ask you is part of the English test. And then they will get into details. Okay, we're gonna ask the civil service questions. They tell you questions from the civil test. That they give you a handbook, and they ask you like, when was the United States Constitution? When was the Declaration of Independence? You have to memorize these dates. Like who was the first president of the United States? How many years is a U.S. senator elected for? Things like that. Those 100 questions that are YouTube videos that can help you. Everything is very straightforward. And then they ask you questions like about your trips outside the United States. How many times have you left the United States ever since you became a permanent resident? They also ask you, did any of your trips exceed 6 months? It's very important that people don't stay out of the United States for more than 6 months, because that's a negative factor in your interview. What else? Well, they ask things like that, and then they ask you questions like, have you ever committed a crime? Have you ever been arrested? Have you failed to file taxes? Things like that. Like, do you support the U.S. government and Constitution? Are you willing to bear arms if required by law? Are you registered in the selective service system if you are a male between the ages of 18 and 26 years old? They ask you things like that, and my interview went very well. I got out of there within like 20 minutes, and that's it. Simple, fast, but you have to practice those questions, and you have to know your information. Like when they ask you your date of birth, things like that, you have to exercise. If you don't have good English skills, then you have to practice this over and over, because I know a lot of people who don't speak English fluently and they still passed it because they exercised their pronunciation and practicing these questions over and over. And maybe with a friend or somebody that you know, family member, practice these questions over and over. It's going to be beneficial. And that was it for this video. I hope you liked it, and if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section.